Hi there, my name is Brandon Dempsey. I'm a husband, a father, an adventurer, an entrepreneur, a professor, and a global nonprofit leader. When I was a kid, I was just your average, everyday kid. I had these crazy adventures. I used to tell my friends' parents, hey, someday I'm gonna climb Machu Picchu. I'm gonna hike and run along the Great Wall of China. I'm gonna go drive and own fast cars. I'm gonna do all these amazing things. And all these kids' parents were like, okay. And I'm like, I'm going to attack life. And then I got into high school and got into college, and these things called bills, these things called responsibilities and rent, like just started to get in the way of these dreams that I'd set. And I remember a friend of mine that I met talking to said, Brandon, goals without a date are just a dream. Goals without a date are just a dream. And I remember hearing that and being like, all right. So if I reverse engineer that, then that means dreams with a date are simply a goal. Dreams with a date are simply a goal. And I went working and said, all right, how can I take this concept of dreams with a date are simply a goal and build a construct with which I could start to achieve these dreams and make them goals? And as I started to do some of this research, I came across this aspect called the reticular activation system. And what I learned is that our brains are biologically, not psychologically, biologically wired to give us exactly what we want. You see, in our brains, there's this thing called the reticular activation system that sits between the unconscious mind and the conscious mind, all right? Our unconscious mind is constantly taking in all this data, all these points all day long. It's why if I say, find the color red, you see the color red. Or if I say, find the color blue, you see the color blue everywhere. Or if you've ever wanted to go buy a car and you think you're going to be really unique and then all of a sudden that car is like everywhere on the road, that's the reticular activation system finding things in your subconscious and saying, oh, nope, you want that? I'm going to let it through. You want that? I'm going to let it through. You want that? All right, I'm going to let it through. It's also the same reason why if you've ever met some people like Bill or Bob who are just like grumpy all day long, and if you ask them how their day is going, they can tell you absolutely everything that went wrong with their day. It's not quite their fault. It's just the reticular activation system is programmed to look for all the junk all day long, and so that's what they see. So in understanding how this reticular activation system started to work, I thought, okay, I need a construct to help control and help focus this. So you've got a card in front of you, and I first did this exercise with a blank piece of paper. And the way this exercise works is you start by drawing a rectangle in the center of that piece of paper. And you think about what are all the things I'd like to experience, buy, see, or do. And outside of this rectangle, you start to write down what are all the things I'd like to experience, buy, see, or do. So think about it. Write one or two things down right now. Now, if you're like me, when you first did this exercise, you probably easily wrote down Iron Man. You probably wrote down ride motorcycles in Africa. If you're like me, you probably also write down marry a beautiful woman, because when I first did this exercise, that's what I wrote down. She's here in the audience somewhere. I also wrote down become an amazing father. And so what I want you to think about are what are all these things that you want to accomplish in life. Now from there, I want you to think about, okay, what can you control? What can you do on a weekly basis that's in your control to actually make these things become a reality? And if you think about what is in your weekly control to make these things become a reality, whether it's, okay, I want to buy a certain car, all right, I'm going to save this much money. If it's I want to be an amazing husband, okay, I'm going to read these books, or I'm going to go to these seminars, or I'm going to talk to other amazing husbands about what it takes to be an amazing husband or amazing father, right? Everything breaks down in our weekly control to time or money. Time or money are both in our control. And people tell me all the time, yeah, okay, Brandon, but money's not really my control. And I say, no, it is. What you choose to spend and what your potential for earning is 100% in your control. So you draw a line down the middle of this rectangle, and you write time on the left-hand side, and you write money on the right-hand side. And as you look at these things you want to experience, buy, see, or do, in a weekly basis, you write down, okay, what are the things that I can do on a weekly basis to achieve these aspects from a time and money standpoint? Maybe it's just saving money. Maybe it's scheduling time. But it's just in your control. Now, here's where the cool part happens. Once you've gotten a bunch of things written down, you fold, well, first of all, if you have a blank sheet of paper, you'd fold it in thirds. If you have the card that's there, you fold it in thirds, so it's a handy little business card size, so you can carry it in your wallet. You turn around, and on the back, you write 1 year in the first column on the left, then you write 3 years, and then you write someday. And you take the things you wrote outside of the box here, and you rewrite them on this side of the paper so that everything falls into where you realistically think you can accomplish these types of goals. Now, it's okay if everything you write is in the someday column. That's totally cool. The goal is just to get everything from this side rewritten on this side. And once you get everything transferred over, the first thing you do is say, okay, I've got it all written down here. Now, what one thing can I move to the left? What one thing can I move from the someday column to the 3-year column? Or what one thing can I move from the 3-year column to the 1-year column? And this magical thing happens. This magical thing called the reticular activation kicks into gear and says, okay, I understand it now. You want to accomplish this here? I'm going to start looking for all of the opportunities to help you manifest that. So when I wrote Iron Man in the someday column, and then I moved it over into the 3-year column, eventually moving it over into the 1-year column, suddenly I started to meet all these other amazing triathletes who had done this incredible race. Then I had someone offer to coach me for free on how to become and do the Ironman. And I did it. And it's amazing how your brain will start to find opportunities to manifest these types of goals in your life. Now, do I accomplish every goal that I set out to accomplish in life? No. Well, let me rephrase that. Do I accomplish every goal that I set out to accomplish in the timeline with which I originally decided? No. But do I accomplish pretty much every goal that I've set out to accomplish? Pretty much. You see, when I was a kid, I wanted to live this life of adventure. And today, I can stand up here and tell you that I'm living that life of adventure on a daily basis. Thank you.